Hello, and welcome to RPGMD, a resource dedicated to all things dice, dragons, and gaming. Now, Dungeons & Dragons is a game that is absolutely riddled with rules. In fact, they've published a multitude of books on the subject. And with all of these different books, it can be pretty easy for players not to have every single one of these rules memorized. Obviously, everyone knows the simple rules like roll for initiative, blah blah blah, but in this video, we'll be taking a little bit of a deeper look at 5 rules people often either forget or maybe even choose to ignore. Now, there's multiple reasons why people may do this. Either they may not know the rule exists, or perhaps they find it more fun as a homebrew, which is totally okay. But this video should allow Dungeon Masters to be a little more confident when challenged by players that they know the official rules and can stick by that if that is what your table has decided to do. Now, just to reiterate, in 5th edition, what the Dungeon Master says goes, even secondary to the official rules. So as I said, if you don't like any of these rules or you play differently at your table, I'm not saying you should change that. What is important to know the official rules by, though, is that this is what all of the challenge rating for monsters and encounters are based off of. So knowing that your rules are different at your table will allow you to know whether you need to downscale or upscale these encounters, because maybe you're letting your players get away with a lot more than the encounters or the monster manuals think your players can, and maybe you need to add more or less monsters. Starting off with one of the more punishing of the rules, number 1 is going to be that you can in fact die instantly from being hit. That's right, what many players don't know is that when players are hit by an attack, you must consider the damage that goes beyond 0 hit points. When a player hits 0 hit points, usually player characters either make their death saving throws or just wait for a party member to probably cast Healing Word on them so that they instantly stand right back up. What I don't see a lot of players doing is asking what the total damage is and then calculating the damage beyond 0. This is because if a single attack gets you to negative your max HP, your character dies on the spot. For example, if a wizard has 12 hit points and is hit by an attack from a bugbear that does 24 hit points, the wizard would die on the spot. No death saving throws, no chance for Healing Word, dead. And this is more common at the lower levels, obviously, as you have less hit points, and this is also the time that most player characters don't know the rules as well themselves. So keeping an eye out for these things can, unfortunately, result in more player character death really early on. Now, luckily, these points aren't cumulative, therefore you don't need to remember the previous negative damage and add up if you are attacked again. You go back to 0 after each hit as long as a hit doesn't kill you outright. But what you do need to consider is that when you are making death saving throws, you are considered incapacitated, and thus any melee attack within 5 feet of you is an instant critical hit, which will also double the damage rolls. Therefore, in our previous example, if a wizard was in a death saving throw state and incapacitated, and the bugbear went to attack him again, it would instantly be a critical hit, causing 2 failed death saving throws. But you should also calculate the damage, which is double dice roll, and it is very likely that that bugbear is going to do 12 damage in that state, instantly killing the wizard. Number 2 is going to be that invisibility does not make you undetectable. Now, an often misunderstood spell is invisibility and greater invisibility. Most players have a hard time understanding that after they cast invisibility on themselves, they can't do whatever they want with no penalties. They can't walk around, tap people on the shoulder, and it still not be detected. What invisibility does add is it makes you heavily obscured, which gives you advantage on your attacks and disadvantage on attacks made against you. It does not mean that monsters have absolutely no idea where you are, as you can still be smelt, heard, and perhaps even leave footprints on the ground, making it very obvious. Especially if a character doesn't even move, invisibility essentially adds nothing. Now, this can be used in combat as a better technique for stealth if the player takes the hide action, as they should be able to do so, but most player characters instantly assume that they are utterly and completely undetectable, which is simply not the case. Number 3 is going to be that advantage and disadvantage don't stack. I think most players understand that there is no such thing as double advantage or anything like that, but something I see a lot is in situations where a player both has advantage and disadvantage, and then perhaps advantage again, and say, oh, well, I have a net positive advantage, therefore I roll with advantage. Unfortunately, also not the case. If a player has 2 times the advantage and 1 disadvantage, they actually still just cancel each other out to net neutral. This means that a character could have 8 different reasons for disadvantage on a target, and as long as they have 1 reason for advantage, they still roll a neutral roll, and you don't do kind of math to make sure that everything pieces out. Now, in that case, this is kind of a rule that I disagree with, but in general, there's no such thing as getting advantage if there's any reason for disadvantage on a roll. Number 4 is going to be that jumping can automatically succeed at certain distances. Yes, no acrobatics or athletic checks are actually needed for a lot of jumps, and jumps are aplenty in Dungeons & Dragons, as this is dangerous work. No adventure is complete without some kind of bridge, chasm, or even just hopping a farmer's fence. What many DMs do is have characters roll for these, but they forget that this is intimately tied to the strength score, like health points are tied to the constitution score. And there are 2 ways to look at jumping. The first is a distance jump, which is actually equal to your strength score in feet as long as the character has a running start. Thus, players could go as far as 18 feet or even 20 with no roll. Then with height, it is 3 plus your strength modifier in terms of feet upwards. And again, character's height is not taken into account here at all, so you could have a short little 3-foot gnome who could jump as high as 8 feet tall with absolutely no roll. Now, many dungeon masters may require their player characters to roll a d20 just to see if they epically fail this, but as a player character, you are well within your rights to push back and say that you should automatically be succeeding on these rolls, as long as you don't roll a 1. And number 5 is going to be that there's actually no such thing as a critical skill success. That's right, probably the most common rule that I see misused or perhaps just homebrewed is that player characters who roll a 20 on something like an Arcana check do not have to instantly succeed or do something extravagant. Yes, if you roll 20, it's going on a performance check, it's going to be the best performance that your character is capable of, but that does not mean that the DM is required to do anything. If the party decides that they're going to attempt to tame a dragon with animal handling and the druid rolls a 20, the DM does not have to give you the dragon as a pet simply because you rolled a 20. Obviously, I would go for a little bit of leniency here and say that most of the time people who roll 20s should succeed, as it would feel not great as a player character to roll a 20 and then still fail. But if the player character is trying to do something absolutely game-breaking or ridiculous, you are well within your rights as a dungeon master to say that there's no such thing as a critical, and this is not like a critical attack where it always succeeds no matter what. And with that, that's actually going to wrap up our video on 5 forgotten rules in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I know this isn't the first video of its kind, but these are all rules that I haven't really seen addressed before that I wanted to kind of touch on here, just to give players with a little more inkling for the rules some more information to kind of digest. As always, thank you to anyone who's made it to this far in the video, and please like, favorite, and subscribe, and leave any rules that you often see misinterpreted, or maybe even your favorite homebrew rule in the comments below. I am RPGMD, bringing you all things dice, dragons, and gaming, and you can find links to my other videos over here and over here. I will see you guys next week.